Have you noticed your energy dipping lately? Your ankles swelling by the end of the day? Or your lab numbers creeping up just a little and told yourself it's probably just age? What if I told you that for millions of Americans, those subtle signs are not just aging, but the early whispers of kidney failure quietly unfolding in the background? Because here's the urgent truth: your kidneys can lose up to 50% of their function before you feel anything serious at all. And by the time symptoms become obvious, the word dialysis may already be entering the conversation. I'm Dr. Mark Ellis, and after years of treating patients across the United States, I can tell you this kidney disease doesn't explode overnight. It erodes silently, day by day, meal by meal, while you're busy living your life. Every single day, your kidneys filter nearly 50 gallons of blood, removing toxins, balancing minerals, and keeping your heart beating steadily. But when that filtration weakens, dangerous minerals like potassium, phosphorus, and sodium begin to accumulate, and that silent buildup can trigger irregular heart rhythms, bone weakness, fluid retention, and a rapid decline that feels like it came out of nowhere. But here's what most people never hear inside a rushed clinic. You are not powerless in this process. The foods on your plate can either overload your kidneys and push them closer to failure, or they can reduce inflammation, lighten the mineral burden, and help preserve filtration for years longer than you thought possible. And in today's video, I'm going to reveal 6 vegetables that may be quietly stressing your kidneys, even though you believe they're healthy, along with 4 powerful kidney supportive alternatives that can help protect your numbers, stabilize your labs, and potentially delay dialysis. And one of those healthy vegetables might already be sitting in your refrigerator right now, which is exactly why you need to stay with me until the end. Spinach looks innocent, clean, green, heart healthy. But for weakened kidneys, it can become a silent mineral overload that pushes filtration to its limit. Here's the hard truth most people never hear: one single cup of cooked spinach can contain over 800 milligrams of potassium. And when kidney function drops below a GFR of 60, your body may no longer clear that potassium efficiently. That buildup doesn't always cause pain. It causes instability, irregular heartbeats, muscle weakness, sudden fatigue that feels like it came out of nowhere. I had a patient, Robert, 68, who drank green smoothies every morning because he believed he was doing everything right. Within 6 months, his potassium levels climbed dangerously high. He didn't change his medication. He didn't skip appointments. He just added more healthy greens. What he didn't realize is that spinach is also loaded with oxalates compounds that form sharp crystals inside vulnerable kidneys, increasing the risk of stones and accelerating filtration decline. And here's what makes it worse: when spinach is cooked, it shrinks dramatically, concentrating minerals into just a few bites. You think you're eating less, but you're actually consuming 3 to 4 times the potassium your kidneys can safely handle. But knowing this alone isn't enough, because there's another everyday comfort food that delivers an even bigger potassium surge, and most Americans eat it weekly without a second thought. That comfort food, I'm talking about potatoes. Soft, warm, familiar, and for weakened kidneys, dangerously deceptive. White potatoes and sweet potatoes are often labeled as natural and nutrient-dense. But for someone with reduced kidney function, they act like a potassium bomb entering the bloodstream all at once. One medium baked potato can contain over 900 milligrams of potassium, nearly half of what many CKD patients should consume in an entire day. I remember Linda, 72, who told me proudly she had given up junk food and switched to baked sweet potatoes every evening. Within 3 months, her potassium levels crept into the danger zone. She felt more fatigued, her legs felt heavy, and one night she experienced heart palpitations that sent her to the emergency room. Nothing dramatic had changed in her life except her dinner plate. Here's what makes potatoes particularly risky: the skin holds even higher concentrations of potassium, and most people eat it believing it's the healthiest part. When kidney filtration declines, excess potassium remains in circulation, interfering with electrical signals that regulate the heart. That's when hyperkalemia becomes not just a lab number, but a real cardiac threat. Now, there are preparation methods like leaching that can reduce some potassium, but most families don't consistently apply them. And if you're eating fries, mashed potatoes, or roasted wedges weekly, the cumulative load adds up faster than you think. But just knowing about potatoes isn't enough, because there's another red-colored staple hiding in plain sight that may accelerate kidney decline even faster, and almost no one suspects it. Tomatoes seem harmless, bright, fresh, Mediterranean approved. But when kidney function begins to decline, tomatoes, especially tomato sauce, can quietly accelerate mineral overload faster than almost any other vegetable on your plate. The danger isn't just the tomato itself, it's the concentration. 1 cup of tomato sauce can contain over 1,000 milligrams of potassium, double or even triple what's in a raw tomato. And when kidneys are filtering at a reduced GFR, that concentrated surge doesn't flush out easily, it lingers. I had a patient, Michael, 64, who switched to what he believed was a heart-healthy diet, whole-grain pasta, olive oil, and generous amounts of marinara sauce. Within a year, his lab results showed a steady decline in kidney filtration. Nothing dramatic, just a slow slide. What we uncovered was simple nightly pasta heavy sauce and frequent canned tomato products. What most people don't realize is that processing tomatoes into paste or sauce removes water but leaves minerals behind, intensifying potassium density in every spoonful. And there's another layer: acidity. Tomato-based products are naturally acidic, which may increase dietary acid load. In weakened kidneys, excess acid contributes to metabolic stress, low-grade inflammation, and faster nephron loss over time. It's not a sudden crash, it's erosion. So what's the solution? Portion control. Fresh tomatoes in small amounts. Diluted sauces. Or better yet, rotate with lower potassium alternatives. But knowing this still isn't enough, because the next superfood green I'm about to reveal is praised everywhere online, and it may overload struggling kidneys even faster than tomatoes. Swiss chard and beet greens are often crowned as superfood royalty. Dark, vibrant, nutrient-dense, the kind of vegetables influencers post in glowing green bowls online. But here's what rarely trends on social media for compromised kidneys. These greens can deliver one of the most aggressive mineral surges of all. 1 cup of cooked Swiss chard can contain close to 960 milligrams of potassium, rivaling or even exceeding potatoes. And like spinach, these greens are packed with oxalates compounds that can crystallize inside already stressed nephrons. I had a patient, Carla, 70, who replaced iceberg lettuce with sautéed beet greens after reading about their antioxidant benefits. Within months, her potassium trended upward despite stable medication. She felt off, more muscle weakness, occasional tingling, unexplained fatigue. What changed? Just her greens. The problem wasn't the intention, it was the concentration. When kidney filtration slows, excess potassium doesn't exit efficiently. It accumulates, altering cardiac electrical balance and increasing arrhythmia risk. And unlike tomatoes or potatoes, Swiss chard is often eaten believing it's a direct health upgrade. That psychological health halo makes it even more dangerous because no one questions the portion size. Large servings repeated weekly quietly strain weakened filtration. Now, could portion control help? Yes. Could rotating with lower potassium greens reduce risk? Absolutely. But most people don't track mineral load the way kidneys require. And just knowing about these greens still isn't enough, because the next seasonal favorite, especially during fall, may seem comforting and harmless. Yet its slow accumulation can silently push kidney function closer to the edge. Winter squash and pumpkin feel safe, seasonal, comforting. They show up at Thanksgiving tables and in clean eating meal plans all over America. But here's the uncomfortable reality: these bright orange favorites can quietly load struggling kidneys with more potassium than most people realize. 1 cup of cooked butternut squash can deliver over 580 milligrams of potassium. And unlike leafy green, squash is dense, sweet, and easy to overeat in large portions. I remember Thomas, 66, who switched from white bread and pasta to roasted pumpkin bowls because he wanted to eat clean. Within months, his lab showed a subtle but steady potassium rise. No dramatic symptoms, just creeping fatigue and mild swelling that he brushed off. What we uncovered was simple, generous servings almost daily. The issue wasn't pumpkin itself, it was frequency plus volume in the setting of declining filtration. Here's what makes squash particularly deceptive. Its natural sweetness masks the mineral load. People assume vegetable equals unlimited. But kidneys don't calculate by intention, they calculate by milligrams. And when GFR drops, repeated moderate surges become cumulative stress. Over time, that slow mineral accumulation increases cardiovascular risk and accelerates nephron strain. The smarter move: smaller portions, rotate with lower potassium vegetables, and avoid making squash a daily staple if your kidney numbers are borderline. Awareness changes trajectory. But just knowing about seasonal vegetables still isn't enough because the next category isn't fresh or colorful. It's shelf-stable, convenient, and sitting in millions of American pantries right now. Canned vegetables don't look dangerous. They look practical, budget-friendly, convenient. But for vulnerable kidneys, they may be the most underestimated threat on this list. The issue isn't potassium this time, it's sodium. Most canned vegetables are preserved in brine, and a single cup can contain 300 to 400 milligrams of sodium, sometimes more. That might not sound dramatic until you realize that chronic kidney disease often requires sodium restriction, below 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams per day. One side dish can quietly consume a quarter of that limit. I treated a patient named Harold, 74, who insisted he rarely used salt. And he was right, he didn't. But he relied on canned green beans, canned corn, canned soups. His blood pressure remained stubbornly high despite medication. His ankles swelled by evening. The culprit wasn't the salt shaker. It was hidden sodium in processed vegetables. When kidneys struggle, excess sodium pulls fluid into circulation, increasing blood pressure and forcing the kidneys to filter against higher vascular resistance. Over time, that pressure damages delicate glomeruli, like water eroding a filter. Yes, you can rinse canned vegetables to reduce some sodium. Yes, low sodium labels help, but most people don't check labels consistently, and repeated exposure creates a silent cycle. Sodium retention to fluid overload, to higher blood pressure, to faster kidney decline. So before you assume it's just vegetables, pause. Convenience can come with a physiological cost. But knowing what harms your kidneys is only half the equation, because the next 4 vegetables I'm about to share can actually reduce inflammatory stress and lighten the filtration burden in ways most people completely overlook. Now let's shift from damage to protection, because kidneys don't just decline, they respond to what you feed them. And one of the smartest swaps you can make is replacing high potassium staples with cauliflower. It doesn't trend on social media. It doesn't look dramatic, but metabolically it's a quiet ally. 1 cup of cooked cauliflower contains roughly 170 milligrams of potassium, dramatically lower than potatoes or squash, while still providing fiber and anti-inflammatory compounds that support vascular health. I had a patient, Denise, 69, whose potassium levels were hovering near the upper limit. Instead of eliminating comfort foods entirely, we made strategic substitutions. Mashed cauliflower instead of mashed potatoes. Cauliflower rice instead of white rice several nights a week. Within 3 months, her potassium stabilized without increasing medication. No miracle, just math and consistency. Here's what makes cauliflower powerful. It delivers volume and satiety without overwhelming mineral load. For kidneys operating at reduced filtration, lowering potassium intake, even by a few hundred milligrams daily, can reduce cumulative stress over time. That translates into steadier lab values and less risk of sudden spikes. The solution isn't restriction, it's replacement. When you swap intelligently, you lower inflammatory burden while preserving flavor and fullness. And that's how long-term kidney preservation actually works in real life. But knowing one smart substitute isn't enough, because the next vegetable adds something. Cauliflower can't powerful antioxidant protection without pushing your potassium into the danger zone. Red bell peppers don't just add color to your plate, they add protection. While many vegetables overload weakened kidneys with potassium, red bell peppers offer something rare, powerful antioxidant support with a relatively low mineral burden. 1 cup contains roughly 210 milligrams of potassium, dramatically lower than tomatoes or squash, yet delivers high levels of vitamin C, beta-carotene, and anti-inflammatory compounds that help protect vascular tissue surrounding delicate kidney filtration units. I once worked with a patient named Gloria, 71, whose kidney numbers were slowly declining despite controlled blood pressure. Her diet wasn't extreme, but it lacked antioxidant diversity. We began incorporating sliced red bell peppers into salads, stir-fries, and snacks instead of higher potassium options. Within months, inflammatory markers improved modestly, and her potassium levels remained stable. No drastic intervention, just strategic upgrades. Here's why this matters. Oxidative stress accelerates nephron damage. Free radicals attack microvascular tissue, reducing filtration efficiency over time. Antioxidant-rich foods like red bell peppers help neutralize that stress without overwhelming the kidney's mineral clearance capacity. It's not just about avoiding harm, it's about strengthening resilience. And unlike restrictive diets that feel punishing, this is additive. Flavor without overload, color without consequence. That's how sustainable kidney protection works in real life. But even antioxidant power isn't the full story, because the next vegetable on this list does something deeper. It influences inflammation at the cellular level in ways most people never realize. Cabbage is one of the most underrated kidney-supportive vegetables in America. It doesn't trend like kale. It doesn't get labeled a superfood. But metabolically, it does something powerful. It delivers phytochemicals that reduce oxidative stress while keeping potassium load relatively low, roughly 150 milligrams per cooked cup. That balance matters when filtration is fragile. I once treated a retired school teacher, Margaret, 73, whose kidney function had plateaued at a borderline GFR for nearly 2 years. Instead of chasing exotic supplements, we simplified her plate. We replaced high-potassium greens with lightly sautéed cabbage, added shredded cabbage to salads, and rotated it into soups. Within 6 months, her labs stabilized instead of continuing their slow decline. No dramatic miracle, just reduced inflammatory pressure and lower mineral strain. Here's what makes cabbage different. It contains glucosinolates and sulfur compounds that support detoxification, pathways, and reduce cellular inflammation, 2 key drivers of nephron damage over time. Chronic inflammation is like a low-grade fire inside kidney tissue. It doesn't explode, it smolders. And foods that calm that internal fire can slow structural damage at the microvascular level. And let's be honest, cabbage is affordable, accessible, and easy to prepare. Sustainable kidney protection isn't built on rare ingredients, it's built on repeatable habits. But even inflammation control isn't the final layer of defense, because the next 2 ingredients, often sitting side by side on your cutting board, may quietly determine whether you lower sodium stress or keep feeding the cycle of kidney decline. Garlic and onions may be the simplest kidney protective tools hiding in plain sight. They're not flashy, they're not marketed as miracle cures. But metabolically, they change the game, especially when sodium is the silent driver of kidney decline. When filtration weakens, excess sodium increases fluid retention, elevates blood pressure, and accelerates glomerular damage. The solution isn't just eat less salt, it's replace salt intelligently. I worked with a patient, Robert, 76, whose blood pressure remained elevated despite medication adjustments. He swore he had cut back on salt, but his meals were bland, so he often compensated with processed sauces later in the week. We rebuilt flavor differently, sautéed garlic as a base for soups, caramelized onions in place of salty condiments, fresh garlic blended into dressings. Within 4 months, his systolic blood pressure dropped by nearly 10 points, and his swelling improved without adding another drug. Here's the science. Garlic contains allicin and sulfur compounds that exhibit anti-inflammatory and mild vasodilatory effects. Onions provide quercetin, a flavonoid, linked to reduced oxidative stress and improved endothelial function. Together, they don't just reduce sodium reliance, they support vascular flexibility, which directly affects kidney perfusion. Flavor is leverage. When meals taste good, naturally, sodium intake drops automatically. And that reduces one of the most powerful drivers of chronic kidney stress. But here's the final truth. It's not just what you remove or replace. The preparation method you choose may ultimately decide whether your kidney function stabilizes or continues its silent decline. If there's one thing I want you to remember from today, it's this. Your kidneys are not failing overnight. They are responding to what you consistently do every single day. And that means you have more control than you think. Small, intelligent swaps, smarter portions, paying attention to potassium and sodium instead of assuming every vegetable is automatically safe. These aren't extreme changes. They're strategic decisions that can slow decline, stabilize your labs, and protect your independence for years to come. I've seen patients in their 60s and 70s turn their numbers around simply by understanding what we talked about today. If this video helped you see your plate differently, take a moment right now to save it, because the information here may protect you or someone you love in the future. And make sure you subscribe to this channel, because I share practical evidence-based medical insights every week designed specifically to help you preserve kidney function, control blood pressure, and age with strength instead of fear. You are not powerless. Your next meal is not random. Every choice is a vote for either decline or protection. And as long as you're willing to learn and adjust, there is always room to slow the damage, regain stability, and build a healthier future, one informed decision at a time.